Welcome back to the Wellbeing in Practice podcast, bringing you the latest in complementary, integrative, and functional medicine conversations. I'm Tanya Borowski, Head of Education here at Amrita, and your host. And today I have with me the wonderful Lucy Peel, who is a naturopath, which is quite there, who are quite rare in the UK. And so we are honoured today to be delving into the clinic of a naturopath and one of the leading naturopaths in the UK. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you very much for having me. And there aren't that many of us, sadly, because there isn't currently a BSc course in naturopathic medicine in the UK at the moment. But yes, there are very few of us. Yeah.
Well, that actually brings me very beautifully, as if we planned it. That actually brings me into my first question, because I think it would be really helpful for our listeners who are many nutritional therapists, but I hope many clients will be listening as well. So can you explain your background, Lucy, in terms of how you came into healthcare, and please explain to us what the difference is through your lens of
Sure.
naturopathy and nutritional therapy.
Yeah. And I know a lot of because I speak to a lot of nutritional therapists that they think very naturopathically anyway. But
Yep.
so my route into it was through my own health issues, as it is for everybody. For me, I developed psoriasis when I was 15, and it was really bad. I mean, the boys at school called me a leper. It was that bad. I was just sort of head to toe. And so did all the usual things, did creams, everything. And quite quickly, you sort of think, well, hang on, this isn't fixing the problem at all, is it? You realize with a skin condition like psoriasis. So yeah, I discovered naturopathic medicine when I was living in Australia, actually in my 20s, and really loved the way it brought together science, common sense, kind of traditional medicines, all of that kind of thing, and thinking of the body very holistically. And so I was going to go and study in Australia, and then the BSc course was developed at Westminster University.
Yes,
And
I
so
remember.
I jumped at that. I was so lucky. And I mean, the course was incredible. We had an incredible naturopath called Brian Isabel and Leon Chatow, who was a legendary naturopath. They were both involved in setting up the course, and we got to be lectured by both of them, as well as Roger Newman-Turner. So it was very sort of really that sort of nature cure base of naturopathic medicine, and very holistic. So we studied as some people won't know, but we have a philosophy in naturopathic medicine, and we look at the body, the biochemistry of the body. We look at the structure of the body, and then the mental emotional health, and we call that the triad of health. And then we sit that in somebody's environment. So lots of stress, for example, is usually or environmental stress or pollution or toxic water, whatever it is. But also we think about what you've inherited from your family. So most nutritional therapists obviously studying genetics and also epigenetics. We really think about that. And the other thing is really important, of course, is people's belief system.
Sure.
So we have all of those things that we really kind of have to really make sure that we're exploring with a person, and it's difficult because often people aren't really ready to meet that part of themselves, and so that might be a bit of a challenge for them. But that's generally how we sort of look at a person naturopathically. And then over the years, nutritional therapy kind of slightly exploded really once I graduated, and it became much more functional. And I didn't really know what people were talking about in CPD anymore. So I went off and did my master's in nutritional therapy, because it has become, and I'm sure you agree, because I think you graduated about the same sort of time as me, it's become way, way more complex, nutritional therapy, and way more sort of functional. And yeah, I had to sort of get my game back up. So I went back and did my master's at Worcester.
I'm going to be teaching there, actually.
It's great. Yeah, I loved it up there. So I love Worcester. It's beautiful. And also doing that, I started working for Biomedica, the supplement company as well.
Yes.
So I kind of had this lovely role where I support practitioners with their cases and give them product training, and then I can do that alongside my business. But I also, it means I'm learning all the time, which is just, I'm very lucky, basically, and it's all sort
Well,
of.
gosh, this we could have
Mm,
met many years ago because I was in Australia. That's where I started my naturopathic training, was in Australia. So that's very I didn't know that about you, but I know that you have roots in Australia because obviously we all know and love you for the wonderful work that you do for Biomedica. And yes, absolutely, Biomedica is very much it's very much centered in that with naturopathy as part of its soul. That's very much
mm,
how I see Biomedica, and you very much showcase that, Lucy,
mm,
and I. Yes, I think the the way that nutritional therapy has become more intertwined within functional medicine has its pros and cons, for sure. And I think that functional medicine again is absolutely is evolving, and that qualification IFM have just announced that is they're changing their certification program, so I think that's going to bring another change to our industry. But overall I feel that it's still very much about, and the core of this podcast is about, these terms still don't really mean a great deal to our clients. They still think they understand what a nutritionist is, um but the terms naturopathy, the terms functional medicine, it's very difficult to have an elevator pitch about functional medicine. It's been one of my but actually trying to sum up in a concise sentence everything that we
so
do
hard.
and continue to do. And you've touched on this, and I know that there are many practitioners that will be listening, hopefully sort of on the edge of their seat going, yes, this is that we is that we have to continue to educate ourselves and be and question and keep that open
Mm,
mind,
mm,
because we are involved in science, whether that is whatever the label is, whether that's
mm,
naturopathy, whether it's integrative medicine, whether it's functional medicine, whatever label you want to put that in. um it is we need to be it's basically through a lens. What we do is through a lens that is like a kaleidoscope, that there are just these subtle changes in colors dependent upon the genetic setup of that client and their own unique environmental factors that causes changes, i.e. epigenetics, to
mm,
that individual. And that is the joy of what we do. And we can
mm.
get really deep into a pathway, which is fantastic. But what we will
You can
learn
pull it all the
today
way
through
back up.
your
Yeah.
case study is actually sometimes we just, with that knowledge, it's actually the ability to step back,
Mm,
actually
mm.
try and make this as simple as possible.
100%. And the more complex the case, the more simple I always say to people that you should take it. I think it is really difficult to explain what we do because you know, we don't treat diseases. So we
Yeah.
work with a person to help them get their health better. So you can't ever say, oh, I treat whatever it is, because we
No.
don't, obviously. But also it really depends on who walks through the door, whether they're ready to be helped or not, whether they get what you're trying to say to them. And it's very difficult to do an elevator pitch. I find it really hard to explain what I do, because it's a philosophy of practice
Oh, I
that's
love
then,
that.
yeah, and then it's, you know, it's applied to that person. And you know, we have our therapeutic order of cure, and if there's something very acute, you know, you'll deal with that first. Somebody then might disappear and not come back to deal with the real problems underneath, because they don't really understand, because it's such a different way of looking at health. And I think what I've seen in the last 4 years is people seeking out our form of healthcare, because they can't get into the doctor, or for whatever reason, and they're all quite new to it. It's quite a different set of clients, and it's really exciting to me, because they are starting to understand and connect and relate to their body and the environment around them, and getting it. But it is jolly hard to explain what you do. Yeah.
But that's very interesting, Lucy, that
Mm,
you say that as a busy clinician, that you have absolutely noted that within
mm,
the last 4 years that you have seen a different set of clients
mm, mm,
coming to you.
mm,
Um, and so I think that's going to be very interesting to our audience. So within that cohort, is there a level of skepticism around, are you really going to be able to help? What do you do? But I've come to you because I can't get into the doctor, and
well, yeah,
my friend came to see you, and actually
yeah.
they said, can you?
All of the above. And it's really
Okay.
interesting, because sometimes I think there is that feeling that that person is quite desperate, you know, and
Hmm.
they've gone to the doctor, they've got various things wrong with them, they're on quite a lot of medication,
Okay.
and you know, it's really complex when they come to you. And obviously at that point it's also very difficult for us to work with them. But I think it's just going back to that skepticism point. I had a very interesting session a couple of weeks ago with somebody, and I gave them a castor oil pack over their liver, which is one of my favorite things to do. I
Oh,
absolutely love castor oil packs. And she said, as I was putting the pack on, "So what is this supposed to do for me?" And I thought in my mind, nothing. Because if you're going to think like that, and I said, well, it's, you know, it's anti-inflammatory, and it's good for the lymphatics, it's good for the immune. But I could already see she didn't believe. And I think we have to also think about this wonderful thing called placebo, which is your mind being engaged with what you're doing, and
oh
you know,
my
your
gosh.
self
Yeah.
healing ability to do that, and harnessing that, which is a lot of what we do. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But if you are
No,
going to
not
come
at
in and,
all.
yeah, be skeptical, then, you know, I'm just like, oh dear, well, this isn't going to do very much, is it? But hopefully she had a nice treatment. I don't know. But yeah, I think sometimes I'm just thinking of someone I'm working with at the moment who is on a lot of medications, um, and a lot of my job is sending them back to the doctor to ask why they're on this many different types of blood pressure medications and things. They might have had a heart attack, that the consultant would have put them on something. They've gone back to the GP, they've put them on something else. They're now on 4 blood pressure medications plus 5 other medications that they're taking for something else. And it's extremely complex. And actually, what I've found is a lot of this role has been to just help them navigate, and help them, empower them to go back to the doctor and have an honest conversation about why they're on so many medications, actually. Because, yeah, well, that's
No, no,
another whole
that's
that's
no,
not another whole podcast, isn't it?
it is another
Yeah.
podcast, but I
Mm,
think our
mm,
clinicians will
mm.
find that very interesting, because we're not, what you're saying is we're not here to, and we can't absolutely say, oh, come off that med, come off that med. But what I think you're saying is that you see your role as, because we understand what those medications are doing, but what is missing in our current healthcare model, because GPs have only got 10 minutes. What is missing is somebody that is acting as, that can take a bird's eye view, and actually that has an understanding of how, in this instance, medications work,
Yeah.
but these patients come to us actually just wanting somebody to try and cut out the noise, and to actually, can you explain to me why I'm on all of these things, and are there are they all necessary? And so what you're saying is there is a role for giving your clients
Mm.
information about opening up a dialogue with their prescriber around, can we have a review? And I think that's a very powerful,
A review, exactly. A review, yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And
Fabulous.
you know, and we all chose to train to the level we trained at because we want to practice safely
Yes.
and also, you know, be respected by the medical community, because actually what we're doing is helping them, you know, because hopefully these, when we're working with our diet and lifestyle and doing all the work we do, that in all sorts of area, particularly around type 2 diabetes, there's a lot we can do to stop people needing to go on medication. So
Totally.
yeah.
Totally. So,
Mm,
uh, we today, we decided we wanted to discuss a case today,
yes.
so to help showcase how naturopathy can be really helpful, or powerful, not just helpful, but super powerful. And we decided that we wanted to discuss today a case of a young girl who came to see you experiencing gut issues, which let's sort of name what those were. So, because that's quite a broad term, and sort of general anxiety. So could you sort of give an overview of this case,
I
and
will.
then we
Yeah.
can kind of talk through what sort of process you went through and I'm sure what the ups and downs of that case were.
Sure, sure, sure. So
Great.
yeah, I think the reason we focused on this is because a lot of younger people are deciding for ethical reasons to follow a vegan diet. And so what I really want to highlight is, if you are going to follow a vegan diet, you have to take it really seriously, and really focus in on the nutrients that you need, and also just avoid the pitfalls, the modern pitfalls of being vegan, because somebody wants to make money out of you somewhere. So I'm going to talk a bit about that. But this lovely lady, she came to me. She was she had already been diagnosed with general anxiety disorder by her
Okay.
doctor, and she'd already been to the doctor about her IBS, and the doctor said, which is often what happens to people, there is that I can't find anything wrong. So that is then the point where they start to look for someone like me. So she came in and she said, I just feel out of balance. I'm bloated, my lower belly. And then this is where we dig in as practitioners. We start to ask questions and we're very curious. This is the kind of fun part, the Dr. House
Yes.
part. So it was in her lower belly. So we asked that for various reasons, because it makes us think about where this is in the gut. It had been every day for the last month, this bloating. And it can be mild, or it could feel sometimes really painful, like it was going to explode. And then further up in a sort of solar plexus area, she felt there was sort of trapped wind there. And it had started, she came to me in about sort of, I think it was sort of January time. It started in the December or the autumn before. And she'd had two big changes in her life around then. So that's always another question we ask, is when did this start and what was going on in your life when that started? Again, thinking about our triad of health, you know, mental, emotional health, physical health, structural
Love
health.
it. Yeah.
So she had two big changes. One was a new job. And, you know, we talked around that, because actually being an anxious, quite shy person, that was a big stress on her gut. And she'd also switched from being a vegetarian to being a vegan.
Okay.
So she had been vegetarian since the age of 8. So she'd been a long-term vegetarian, and she'd had a recent switch to being vegan.
Gosh.
She was very concerned because she'd actually lost quite a lot of weight. And she was absolutely exhausted. She had headaches. She also had earache. She had a stabbing pain in her shoulders, and she had some mouth ulcers. On taking her health history, she'd also got asthma. And actually, she'd had gut issues since she'd been about 19. She was now about 30 when she came into the clinic.
Okay.
And she recognized that the first kind of digestive issue started was after a really bad breakup. So, you know, already in the session, we're starting to look at and discuss this relationship between emotions and the gut. And I think, you know, when we were talking about what we were going to talk about in this podcast. I really am interested in this connection between anxiety disorders and something called visceral hypersensitivity in the gut, because it's actually a thing, and that means that if you are anxious, you tend to feel more in your tummy, and that can make you even more anxious because you often think it's something really serious. And actually, just having that conversation with people and telling them, this is something I see a lot, it's in the scientific literature, you can see them visibly feel a little bit less worried about their digestive symptoms, because they know it's that gut-brain connection, and they are a more sensitive person, just generally a more sensitive person, which is a lovely thing in lots of ways, but really annoying in other ways.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's really important. And before we go on, there is a question that's kind of come up with that, which I think. So when this woman had this, she'd been experiencing bloating to this level from a young age, and
No, the bloating had started, sorry, when those two things had changed, but
right,
she'd kind of had long-term digestive issues. So she'd
digestive
kind of
issues.
like been
Okay,
aware that, when she
okay.
was, yeah. But the
So,
actual
but
kind of big change had happened sort of 3 months before, when she changed her diet and changed
right,
jobs.
okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
could I just cover off
of
that,
course.
as practitioners, which I'm sure you do, when there is that sort of ovarian cancer and being referred back to their GP, when there is absolutely, of course, we think about the gut brain, we think about the
Mm,
enteric nervous system,
mm,
but if there is extensive bloating and that's been
mm.
going on, then that is something that we
So she'd
should.
already been, yes. So she'd already been, thank you, but she had already been to the GP and come to me after that, and the
I
GP
love
had,
that. Okay,
yeah. So I did actually refer back to the GP anyway, because I wanted to, considering she's a long-term vegetarian, so I'll just get her notes back up again. I really wanted to get her iron levels, her B12 levels, and her vitamin D checked.
love that.
Yeah, so I had referred her back for that. And yes, but absolutely, you're so right. Thank you for flagging that about the bloating. So one thing we think about as naturopaths, again, is that kind of mind body connection, and a lot of the things I look at with anxiety is breathing. And
Love that.
most people with anxiety, in fact, every single one I've seen in my clinic, upper chest breathes. And so they're sort of breathing into their shoulders, basically. So
Yes.
you remember I said she had that pain in her shoulders, she had this kind of uncomfortable feeling in her solar plexus. There's various clues often, when you're taking case history, that some of this is being compounded by breathing. And I have a lovely chart that I show these clients, which was from Leon Chaitow, where you show them the kind of cycle of what happens when you overbreathe and you start to feel anxious, and you start to feel butterflies in your tummy, and that makes you feel more anxious, so you overbreathe a bit more, and then that actually starts to
Love that.
become a biochemical, I can share the slide, a biochemical response in the body, because you're actually affecting the amount of carbon dioxide in your blood.
Yes, of
And
course.
so it actually starts to then affect the buffer system in the blood. The body
Yes.
obviously compensates, because the body is an amazing thing, and it can constrict the gut, basically, this kind of change in things, and you get this sort of pain in your shoulders because you're using these tiny little muscles, auxiliary breathing muscles, in your shoulders instead of your lovely huge diaphragm. So the first thing I do is get them on the massage bed. I do a bit of fascia work to release the upper chest and open up this upper chest area.
Love
So
that.
work along the diaphragm, open this up, and I give them some belly breathing exercises to do every day. And we tend to just keep this very, very simple.
Yep.
And often, I'll say do it when you get home from work, and it's just sort of lying on the floor with a bag of rice over your belly button. And when you breathe in, that has to raise up, because you're actually sort of bringing the breath down into the belly and using your diaphragm rather than your upper chest by doing that. So just this sort of gentle retraining of the breath in between the sessions, and then we work on the fascia in the sessions and do some sort of, I do a lot of breathing workshops in the session. So so I did the fascia release with her to assist the breathing and help with the shoulder pain, which she noticed very quickly was sort of resolving. And then I also suggested that she take a broad spectrum probiotics. By that, I mean lots of different strains of
Okay.
bacteria. And I also suggested a herbal formula, which is designed for kind of nervous and spasmodic complaints. So things like kind of squeezing in the gut. And
Would that
that
be IB Pro by
that
any
would be
chance?
Ivy Pro, if I'm allowed to mention
No,
that.
no, of course, absolutely. No, no, please mention, please
Yeah,
mention. I can
I
hear the
just
practitioners saying,
love
what?
it.
I love it's,
She is like prime IB Pro
yep,
lady, because that gut brain anxiety, possibly a bit of inflammation in there, possibly again
yep.
we have to think about the digestive juices when someone's anxious. They're not really functioning, and it's got caraway, fennel, and globe artichoke in there, so those are really going to help with the digestive juices. It's got lemon balm, which not only supports the gut but supports the brain, and chamomile, which is wonderful. What I also really like about that one is it's in a capsule, but I work with a lot of very anxious people who cannot swallow anything, and they
Okay.
just open it up and make it into a delicious cup of tea 3 times a day. So it's a really good one for my very, very anxious clients. I love
Oh,
it.
that is a
Yeah,
fantastic tip, Lucy. I've been using IB Pro for 2 decades, and
yeah,
I've never thought to open it. So that's a
yeah,
great clinical well-being tip. Thank
yeah.
you. Love that. Yeah.
The other big thing with my sort of real nutritional therapy hat on with any vegan or vegetarian is I do a diet analysis.
Okay.
And so obviously all the nutritional therapists listening will know what that is, but if you're not, basically you send somebody away with a 3-day diet diary, and you get them to fill it in as accurately as possible so that you can
Mm-hmm.
put sort of weights and measures in. And 3 days is obviously better than one, because none of us hopefully eat the same thing every day.
Yes.
Because what we're looking for is that person getting enough of nutrients in their diet, particularly is there enough protein in there? Now you'll all be thinking, oh, iron, of course, is she getting enough iron in her diet? But what I find really surprising when I do vegan diet analysis is that it's actually more the iodine and the selenium that I'm seeing is really low.
That would make
And
sense. That
yeah,
would, yeah.
but yeah, so often that I'll see that as a picture. So I sent her away with her diary analysis.
Could I just interject,
Yeah,
ask a question there? So, do you, as a matter of course, tend to see a client first
yes,
and then ask them to go away and use it?
yes,
And I love that. Okay, that's another
because
great
it
clinical tip.
it might not be for everyone, and actually, I think a lot of the time when you're taking that initial consultation, it might be somebody who has no idea about food, and you can just
Yep,
have a really fun time encouraging them and getting excited about you're going to send them off and eat some healthy food. Whereas
love
if
that.
you kind of
Mm-hmm.
punish them almost by making them show you what the crap that they've been eating, and they're already feeling sensitive about that. I think it's quite a food is such a complex thing, isn't it? And what we
Yes.
use food for and on our relationship with it is so complex. And I don't know that before someone's walked through the door. So I would rather see them first. I do offer for people a one-off session where I will do a report for them, and that's really handy if somebody perhaps just wants to check if they're vegetarian or vegan, and they just want to check that they're on the right path, or
Yeah,
they've
no,
been
that's really
unwell.
helpful.
But
That's really helpful.
generally, for somebody coming in, no, I will see them first and then think about what they need and what they want. It's the same with testing. I
Oh,
very
totally.
rarely
Yeah.
would suggest that unless I've just actually had somebody who we have tested before she came, because she's got Hashimoto's, and she wants to manage it in a certain way. And I said, I'm not seeing you until you've done a test. So that was but that's a completely different
Yeah. That's a
scenario.
different conversation.
Yeah.
But I think that brings up a very important point, kind of
Mm,
looping back in the sort of the way that our industry has very much sort of swung towards functional medicine. And this is
mm,
not in any way about, this podcast is all about being transparent. Let's have
yeah.
a really open, frank conversations. That's what this is about. So within that sort of, IFM model, they've introduced us to the timeline, to all of these forms that we send out beforehand. And what I do a lot in my mentoring group is try and encourage practitioners to not obsess about all of these forms that they're asking clients to fill in before the consultation. And actually, because what's happening is that they're kind of writing their plan before they've even had that initial consultation. And what you've
Oh,
just said is that actually, and my expression of it is just like, look up from the desk, please look up from those forms, and actually just
I
look in
think
the eyes of your client, look in the eye, and have confidence.
100%. And I'm sorry I'm interrupting, because otherwise I'm going to forget this really important point, is that you have to forget about yourself in the session. That person is coming to you to put the pieces together.
Yeah,
So when you take, this lady, for example, she comes in, she's got bloating, blah, 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 and then we take the medical history. After I've taken the kind of what have you come here for, I then take the medical history, and that person can then sit and put the pieces together themselves. Whereas if you've done a form before, it's very clinical. But
yeah,
sitting there going, oh, okay, so you had a breakup when you were 19. Oh, okay, well, let's put that piece together then, that we now know that there's a real connection between your emotions and your gut. And you're helping that person know their own body,
yeah.
because ultimately it's them going to be living with themselves for forever. And I really love, even if someone just comes for one session, that you're helping them put those pieces of themselves together, because we're not taught any of this at school. We're not taught how to breathe. We're not taught how to look
No,
after ourselves in any way. Yeah, so I think the timeline I love, and I think it's a great concept, but I would do it in the session.
me too. Yeah,
Yeah, and sometimes I would say, don't, if you forget something, don't worry, just send me an email afterwards, and I'll add it in. But generally, when you're doing it in the session, the really key things for that person in their life will come out, because they want to talk about them, and they know. The other analogy I really love, and I think it's the Leo, I can't pronounce his surname,
Gallant.
Preobroom.
Oh,
Preobroom,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think it was him or somebody years ago who said, think of your client as a train who's coming to your station. And I love that analogy, and I often use that. So I think of yourself as a train that's coming to my station. I want to know what you're fueling on. I want to know if you had your carriages replaced.
I
Um,
love that.
and I also, another really important thing is to say, when someone's come to you and they've been ill for a long time, is around noticing when you're talking, if you're feeling a bit frustrated, because it's that other piece of,
Uh,
you've been ill for a long time, nobody's been listening, and here is somebody listening, and just kind of, again, noticing the physical feelings that you're feeling about your health and talking about your health, because you're not often sitting there for an hour and a half talking about yourself. Your friends don't want to don't want to know about your diarrhea or your itchy skin or
no,
whatever, really. And here is somebody listening and helping you understand how you feel about that. And I think that's key, and I don't feel myself, and I'm very happy for practitioners to address me on this, but I don't feel that getting someone to fill in a lot of forms before a session, that would be as organic as it is if you're doing it together in
no,
that
I
time.
wholeheartedly agree. And that's why I
Mm,
really, I felt I just really
mm,
wanted to kind of zoom in on that,
mm.
because I think
Yeah.
it's really important. Thank
Oh.
you. Okay, so you
Yeah.
sent her, so back to your
So
lovely
she's gone
lady.
away. She's gone away. She's done her 3-day diet diary.
You've taught her how
Um,
to breathe. You've
I've
kind of given,
taught her how to breathe, and Yeah, I think I've probably given her some flower remedies. I haven't made a note of that, but probably thinking around her shyness at work, so we probably
Oh,
worked with some
lovely.
flower remedies for that. But sorry, I haven't written that in my notes, but I
No, no, no,
usually
it's
do
fine.
with that sort of thing. So she's gone away, and so breakfast she's having a banana, blueberry, acai powder smoothie with oat milk. She's having snacks of apples, orange juice, peanut
Oh,
butter. Her lunch is a vegan quiche with salad. She's having a rice cake for a snack in the afternoon, dinner macaroni with mixed veg, and a glass of orange squash. And her notes for that are just pulling out one day for
yeah,
that
it's
particular
great.
day, tired after lunch, bloated on waking. So you're already going, oh.
This
So
is just gold.
I know. So why is it just go? Well, I'll tell you why, because we're looking at that and thinking, gosh, no wonder she's so bloated, because that is a lot of fructose in her diet. So
Sure is.
what we see a lot with vegans, and particularly ones that it's not, I don't think it's quite so fashionable anymore, but it was a big thing, wasn't it, on Instagram, following people making delicious smoothie bowls and all of that sort of thing, and it was very much bought into. Is the thing is, if you have that much fructose, it fiddles around with the osmosis in your bowel and can cause quite bad diarrhea. And I've seen that a lot with clients. I'm sure you have too. But
Yep, this is,
yeah.
yeah, brilliant information. Great.
Yeah. And also the other thing is, of course, it's very low protein. There's a lot of carbohydrate in there. And there is just a lack of food groups in there that are vital to vegan health. So, we really need to think about legumes and nuts and seeds as a good source of protein for protein combining,
Yep.
a really good quality olive oil for some really lovely sort of polyphenol rich oil. And when I looked sort of really into her 3-day diet, there was a lot of processed vegan alternatives to vegetarian foods. And this is what I've seen a lot, is people who are long-term vegetarians switching to vegan. And as we are creatures of habit, you reach for the same thing on the aisle, which says vegan cheese or vegan
Ugh.
yogurt or vegan ice cream. And so this sent me down a bit of a rabbit hole. And again, and this is why we do these jobs, is because we're really curious. So I went and I emailed her and I said, can you tell me the brands and everything of all these vegan things? And I went around the supermarket, and I mean, there was a lot of effing and blinding, because you look at these packets, and again, nutritional therapists, you must go and do this. You have to know what people are eating. There is 0% protein in those vegan cheeses. 0%. So there's my lovely lady. She's been using cheese and eggs as protein sources, and she's cut those out, and she's switched
Yeah,
in all good faith, thinking, oh, I'll use the vegan one. But she's not got a master's in nutritional therapy. Why would she think to even look at the back? She
of
just,
course.
she's getting on with her life. It just says vegan cheese, brilliant. And the other things in it, I'll just tell you, the one she had was absolutely revolting. Sorry. It was,
I mean, they taste disgusting. They
have
taste
you tried
absolute.
them?
Yeah,
Oh,
I ordered a meal the other day, and it had vegan feta, and it was disgusting.
yeah. No, it's all really highly processed kind of coconut sort of derivatives of
Yes.
coconut, and yeah, it's I mean, forget ultra processed food. And it makes me feel really sad, because most people who are choosing to be vegan now are doing it for ethical reasons, and
Yep.
and they are being capitalized on. And so I'm just gonna have a little soapbox moment about this, because I then started to look into the fact that vegans are a commodity. It's a huge market for these sorts of food, and it's the plant-based market is enormous. It's millions and millions of pounds, worth
Well,
millions and millions of pounds.
yeah.
um, and these stats are quite old, but one of the supermarket chains, their vegan category sales increased by 1,678% from 2015 to 2016. So just to give you that. And then another supermarket sees an increase of 65% in sales of plant-based products year on year. And when you start digging into that, I'm afraid I do. So
No, we love that.
It's, we have to consider that there are clients who in good faith are going into a supermarket, and we trust supermarkets, we do trust them, and we think we trust these brands. It's very clever, and they're not good for us. So, I encourage anybody listening to go around the supermarket and look at those vegan ice creams, look at those ingredients in those, look at that vegan feta, because I've got it here, 0% protein, mainly coconut oil and starches. Vegan creme fraiche has got hydrogenated fats, which used to be called trans fats. They've renamed them, very clever. Vegan chicken slices, 0% protein, and vegan ice cream, sugar, glucose syrup, refined soybean oil, then some ingredients I didn't even know what they were, wheat flour, all sorts of things in there. So, really do have a look at what's in those foods.
You mentioned and I just want to circle back to that, is that a plant-based diet should be focused on. And in fact, I was listening to a very recent podcast on Zoe about plant power, which it is possible, and you've used this, you've highlighted this, it is possible to get all of your amino acids from plants, absolutely. But the top line, you have to include pulses. You have to be eating a lot of pulses. And pulses are they've become slightly more trendy because they're on Dragon's Den, and you get them in a glass jar, which actually I do prefer those.
They're delicious.
They are absolutely delicious. But if you think about the packets of these, they're like, it's like when you go into the cereal aisle, the oats, which are arguably the most nutritious and least devoid of being refined, are on the bottom shelf, same as the pulses. The packets of pulses that, God shame, you have to cook them yourself, but are on like the very bottom shelf. They're, you have to scramble around on your knees to actually get a packet of chickpeas or pui lentils that you need to cook yourself.
Obviously you don't scramble, you squat and use it as a way to get a little extra.
I was being flippant. Anyway, so yes, back to your lovely case. So you agreed, you realized that you took time out to investigate, which is just what you do, what she was eating, and you very quickly saw, okay, there's work to be done here.
Yes, and then when I put her information through her dietary report through the software, she was very low in energy intake as well from this diet. So again, there she is feeling tired. She's not capable of getting enough energy from what she's eating like this. And
what software do you use, Lucy?
Well, it's another conversation. I did used to use the Nutriman one, but it's that doesn't exist anymore. So if you've got any tips, if anyone's got any tips of a good software, please pass them on.
Okay.
Because I think it's a really important part of what we do as nutritional therapists. You can't do nutritional therapy without analyzing a vegetarian or vegan diet. So very low iodine. She was low selenium, low B vitamins. She was low in her electrolytes as well, actually, and low omega-3 as well. So again, I think, as we said, to be able to be a vegan is really what I tend to do is do them as a report and just show them what foods are rich in those nutrients, give them some recipes. I really, really love the Alliance of Natural Health do a food for health vegan guide, and it's a beautiful pie chart of all the different food groups, and the dark green leafy vegetables. I've just pulled it up here, but you've got the protein rich foods, and it lists all of those, and the superfoods and 10% grains and what the healthy fats are. It's a lovely chart. That's the Alliance of Natural Health. I can give you the link for that. The Food for Health vegan guide. It's
I've seen that. It is great. Yeah,
it's really great, and I'll often put that as in the report as well as an A4. So her plan was really, at this point, was I put some vegan protein powder in to help, because she was very concerned about that weight loss as well. So trying to sort of build her up. A multivitamin and mineral, some vegan omega-3s, some digestive enzymes while she was introducing the legumes. I didn't want her to feel even more bloated.
Yep,
And
that would make sense.
yeah, and obviously some vitamin D and B12, which are very, I mean, you just have to supplement those. They're non-negotiable for a vegan. So I also think there's a lot of, the reason I give a multivitamin, there's a lot of other things like choline, for example, that are kind of non-negotiable that you just
But yep,
sensibly need to put in there: selenium, iodine, etc. So I do actually use another Biomedica product for that, which is called BioTress, which is really, I always use that with the vegan clients actually, because it's got good doses of all of those things in there. So yeah, so that was her supplement plan, and we also did some more body work. I actually did some abdominal massage with her as well, and particularly around her ileocecal valve. So that is where your
nice.
small intestine joins your large intestine, and it can get a bit kind of blocked there in
Yep.
that area. And you know, as I mentioned, she had that lower belly bloating, so we started already with changing her diet, starting her breathing, and then moving in gently to that abdominal massage as well, just to kind of get everything moving around. So yeah, so she started to then see an outcome with her bloating and fruit intake, which was great, because I'd passed that, so you know, I'd educated her around fructose and her gut. Her well-being improved. She felt more in balance from her dietary changes, and she was able to reframe her health anxiety in context of her symptoms. And at this point, I referred her to a counsellor, because she'd sort of got all that knowledge, she'd understood that part of herself, and she was ready to be referred on to a counsellor, which was a really lovely thing to be able to do for her as well. So yeah, she's quite a good example, I think, of quite a naturopathic way of working with someone, thinking about mental health, structural health, biochemistry, and environment, that stressful, you know, office environment making her feel anxious. So yeah, hopefully that gives a flavor of what we do. Long elevator.
No, that is so helpful. There are
Mm,
so many clinical pearls in there, and just and this is the point of this podcast, is that we bring in naturopaths, we bring in doctors, we bring in maybe sometimes individuals who represent, who that's their sort of
mm,
scientific officers for products. But this is just so helpful, and I think, and it comes back to really embedding in those naturopathic principles. And what you've given us is a real life view into your clinic and how you practice. And it's not sort of, it's a real life case. You've stripped it back and you've made it, I don't want to say you've made it simple, because actually it's not simple. But you've relied on your knowledge and just actually being in the room with that, and being in the room with that person. Yeah. So I think I really thank you. And showing someone how to breathe and actually getting back in touch with their own bodies is an incredibly powerful tool. So thank you so much.
mm. Oh, such a pleasure. I think I just, so one more thing really is that mind-body connection, and all of that sort of shame people feel about that sort of anxiety and physical symptoms and things being psychosomatic, is often used as a negative term, but it's a thing, it's a real thing, you know, and that's okay. And I think really I'm really passionate about that in our role of helping people feel it's okay to be who they are, and these things to be happening. You know, it's really, really important. So thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Lucy. The views expressed in this podcast are that of the individual and not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate, we welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors.